Mm-mm.
Why are my toys right here?
Cause I cleaned the room.
Daddy,
No, it's already there. You wanna eat it?
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Paul Phoenix.
Daddy,
Hmm.
New challenger.
Wait.
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Battle.
楽しませてくれるのだろう。
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Perfect. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO.
戦いはもっとエレガントなもの。
Get ready for the next battle. Battle.
楽しませてくれるのだろう。
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle.
Yo, Luis, what's up?
Round one. Fight.
Okay. All right, no problem.
Perfect.
You get your promotion now.
Round two. Fight. Perfect. Round three.
Are you still gonna have a match after this one?
KO.
You have great looper. Yeah, I do. I kinda do most of the time parry instead rather than defending. That's why I'm so weak. I gave up so many openings.
Get ready for the next battle.
Well, at least you get your promotion now.
楽しませてくれるのだろう。
Round one.
Here's Freddie Mercury, by the way.
KO. Round two.
Oh, that's bad. That is why. I just started using Paul.
KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight.
Nice one.
戦いはもっとエレガントなものだ
Get ready for the
I just started using pole yesterday, and then for some reason I kind of like him a bit. But yeah, I don't have his new combos yet.
くれるのだろう
The season 3 ones. No, I don't. Yeah, he is.
round one.
Depends on how you use him, but I'm quite a newbie.
Daddy, I found a map we play.
I always meet. You're right.
Daddy, I found a map we play.
Okay.
Daddy, you're going to see it.
Mhm. I'm dead.
Round two. Fight.
Daddy, look at this. Daddy,
Mm.
this is a map
Mm.
Daddy,
Yeah.
this is the same map we play.
Okay.
Look at this.
I can see it.
This is. I like this. Daddy,
Yeah.
Round three.
I can see it.
Fight.
I can get this ball.
Great.
戦いはもっとエレガントなものだ
Get ready for the next battle.
I'm still looking for a character that I can probably make my main character. It's just right now I don't have main character yet, so I keep searching for a character that I can use. See, yeah. I'll get to them soon.
くれるのだろう
Round one. Fight. KO.
Oh no!
Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight.
Oh, Slayax, what's up, man? Is that your IP?
I like Drake.
Welcome to the stream, man.
I like
four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. You win. Get ready for the next battle.
Was that a promotion? Was that a promotion? Ah, sorry, I didn't I didn't notice it.
かかってきたまえ
Round one. Fight.
I recognize! You killed us!
KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight.
You got your promotion still.
楽しませてもらったよ
Oh, is that how it works? If you're both on the same rank, that means bigger points? I didn't know. Big point, same rank. Oh, really?
Get ready for the next battle.
I really didn't care about ranked.
I got a bomb!
楽しませてくれるのだろう
Oh, really? I wasn't really paying attention about ranks, you know. Hmm?
KO. Round two. Fight. Fight. Great. Round 4.
Hey!
Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
Thank you, thank you. I was just lucky. All right, no problem. Thanks for dropping by. Thank you, bro. Thanks.
Where's my water?
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
Get your cameras ready.
Round
Ooh,
1.
Marduk. I like Marduk.
KO. Round
Oosh.
fight. Round 4. Fight.
Hey! Hey, this is my house. Hey, this.
Great.
You put it.
Final round. Fight. Perfect.
I'm number one.
I'm number one.
I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. Great. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Get out
Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. Perfect. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. You lose.
Time.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Great. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Perfect. Round three. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Perfect. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. Great. Final round. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. Final round. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Great. Round three. Fight. KO.
I'm number
You
one.
lose.
I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO.
I'm number one. I'm number one.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win. ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You lose.
ちょっとやばいかも。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. You win. Gotcha. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. Fight. KO.
벌써 끝이야?
You lose.
더 덤벼봐.
New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
No pain, no gain.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. ready for the next battle.
Oh, God.
Round 1. Fight. Great. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose.
I'm still ready to fight.
Get ready for the next battle.
Oh,
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. Final round. Fight.
Oh, I can't believe I won.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Jin Kazama. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle.
You wield.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You lose.
What did I just do?
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist, Jin Kazan Kazuya Mishima. Get ready for the next battle. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Lei Wulong, Jin Kazama. Get ready for the next battle. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Eliza, Jin Kazama. Get ready for the next battle. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Yoshimitsu, Noctis Lucis Kylum. Get ready for the next battle. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Brian Fury, Negan. Get ready for the next battle. Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. Craig Marduk, Kuma, get ready for the next battle.
Go!
Welcome to the King of Iron, Craig Marduk. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. Perfect. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Get ready for the next battle.
Get your cameras.
Round 1. Fight. Perfect. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Perfect. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. Great. Round 4. Fight. KO.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Come on. Come on.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight.
Come on.
KO. Final round. Fight. Perfect. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO.
Excellent.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. Great. You lose.
Excellent.
Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。